live here in Columbus, Ohio. In 2045, it's still ranked the fastest growing city on Earth, but it sure doesn't seem like it when you live in the stacks.
Hello, and welcome to Film Rant. So here's my review of Ready Player One.
Sick reference though, bro.
Oh, thanks, bud.
Dude, your references are out of control. Everyone knows that.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Film Rant. Okay, so I guess I actually have to talk about this movie. Ready Player One is a pop culture tribute movie based on the book by Ernest Cline and directed by this unknown indie director called Steven Spielberg.
Who?
Steven Spielberg. Apparently he's kinda good. Well, I'll be the judge of that. I must admit that judging by the trailers, my initial impression of this movie wasn't great. Yay, references. It looks visually good, but what's the point of all this? Why the references?
What if the movie sucks?
However, trailers are meant to make you ask questions like that, so has Spielberg delivered another gem? Well, to answer that, I'll be going into spoiler territory, so go on an excellent adventure to the cinema if you don't want anything spoiled.
Excellent!
So I'll start with the characters, and I have to say the only interesting one is James Halliday, played by Mark Rylance. Halliday is the mysterious, quirky creator of Oasis. No, not them. It's a game, like Second Life, only with normal people. He seems to have a very interesting but also quite reserved past and never truly answers any of the questions the audience or the characters have for him. I quite like the part at the end where Wade asks him if what they're in is a game or something else, and he straight up smiles and doesn't answer. He was the only character I was properly invested in throughout the movie, and he doesn't even have that much screen time. He is without doubt the most interesting and well acted character, even if he is ferociously stereotypical. Hey, I need to think of a dude who makes a virtual world that becomes the best, most immersive game ever made. Better make him an awkward geek that can't kiss girls. By the nine, show a little creativity. In fact, I have a deleted scene of him at a football match.
Ray, he's kicked the ball. Now the ball's over there. That man has it now. That's an interesting development.
And that actually is the biggest problem with this movie. Like this review, it fills loads of gaps with references that don't really add anything to the core plot. The references do come into play a little bit, but some of it is a little overkill. If you strip away all of the references, the plot in the movie itself is extremely weak. It's an average adventure movie at best. None of the characters are fleshed out, which is why I'm not really talking about any of them. We can see a small part of Wade's poverty-stricken home life, but not enough to make it a key aspect of his character. The villain, played by Ben Mendelsohn, is the same character Ben plays in every movie. He's almost referencing himself. I can't believe that a film with this many references about pop culture and is apparently creative has a generic corporate boss man as the villain. It's laughable. All of Wade's friends are just kind of there too. You know Murder on the Orient Express?
I know of it.
Yeah, well, all of the characters in this movie are like the characters in that movie. They're all there, they're all different in their own way, but where in Murder on the Orient Express they're all Cluedo pieces, in Ready Player One they're all players, and nothing more than that. I was expecting at Ready Player One's core, underneath all of the references, there was going to be some really heartfelt philosophical plot that was going to be really smart and insightful, but there's not. It's got as much depth as #deep, and the end moral is about as insightful as Joey Tribbiani. Hey, guess what? The real world, get this, is more real and interesting than a game world. Because it's real. I mean, wow. I've never been more moved by a movie. With the vast amount of pop culture to use with the plot, there really isn't anything remotely interesting about it. As I said, it's an average adventure movie at best, and the whole thing stinks of missed opportunity. I can't comment on the book because I haven't read it, but the plot in the movie is so thin it makes Jack Skellington look pregnant.
I do not understand.
I do. I understood that reference.
In spite of that though, Spielberg does a decent job setting up both the Oasis and the real world. I think you see just enough of both to get a decent understanding of the state both are in and the atmosphere in them. But again, we don't get enough time to explore either. Spielberg had a lot to get through in his 2 hour 20 movie, and for the most part I think he pulls it off. I think this could have benefited from maybe being a two-parter, just to explore the characters and settings a bit more, but I think the movie still works as a standalone, even if it does suffer as a result. I do have a lot of questions about the plot though. I wouldn't say it has a lot of holes.
That's what she said. Michael, please.
There he is.
Please.
There he is. Come on.
But there are a lot of oversights. Firstly, why is nearly everything a reference to the 80s? I get that Halliday's teenage years were during the 80s, but there is a very heavy bias and focus on the 80s references as opposed to those from other decades. It just didn't seem right that there was only a few references I noticed that were post-1980s, barely anything from the last 5 to 10 years. The only two I noticed that were recent were Halo characters and Tracer from Overwatch. I mean, maybe I did miss a few during the final battle, there was a lot going on. That said, a lot of pop culture now is in meme form, so by 2045 they'll all be outdated and Wade would be saying, "I see dead memes." So I guess I can understand it from that viewpoint. There was also a heavy bias towards movie references than there was games, TV shows or music. I get that it's a big issue getting licensing for all of this, but I would have liked to see a more varied range of references. This is basically Kung Fury with a bigger budget and not satire. I would have loved to see the villain at the end take on the army inside of Metal Gear as opposed to Mechagodzilla. I would have also liked to see pop culture that hasn't happened yet, even if they did it playfully like Jaws 15 and Back to the Future 2. Just something to make the world feel more like an established fictional plane than simply a place to say, "Hey look, the 80s was pretty cool, wasn't it?" My biggest fear with this movie is that people will watch it and be like, "Man, this movie was so cool, it had loads of awesome references." So does this review. Does that make it good?
Absolutely fucking not.
Another question I have is, why are there no hackers? Maybe I missed something, but if there's people still hacking Counter-Strike 18 years after its first release, then I can bet my bottom dollar that there'll be hacker groups trying to crack the code in order to control the Oasis. If there's mods that combat these hackers, where are they? Where are the servers for the game? If there is mods, how are they not taking action against IOI? They clearly don't play the game fairly and they don't even hide themselves. Their avatars literally wear an IOI uniform. Surely what they're doing would break the terms of service. I think I kind of scratched the surface of this, but I would have liked to have seen something about microtransactions come into play. IOI are a big conglomerate with pretty much infinite resources, so in the game they should always have an advantage over your average player from the stacks. I know that all of IOI's people have advanced stats and kind of cheat their way through the game, but I don't know if it was due to microtransactions. With all of the shit that's gone on with EA recently and other companies who charge you for an extra fucking save slot, Spielberg could have added some commentary on corporate greed with regards to microtransactions. I do appreciate that the recent uproar with microtransactions was too recent to be included in the movie, but the issue around them as a whole has been around for much longer. Also, how come for the first key nobody in 5 years thought to go backwards in that race? You can accidentally put your car into reverse, and since this game is a VR where you physically have to move your hands in the way you would in a car, it's a possibility that someone may have just discovered this by accident. If people can find the cult recruitment text in fucking Kanye Quest in less than 2 years, then surely some idiot will have stuck his car in reverse within 5 years of that first challenge being started. I really didn't buy that Wade was the first person ever to discover this. There's a scene in the movie where the gang trick the bad guy by making him believe he's in the real world. When he's actually inside the game. But in the game you're an avatar, and in the game it looks like, well, a game. It looks like 3D models with crazy colour grading and texture work. It doesn't look like the real world at all. So how on earth did Dr. Evil from Evil Corp even buy that shit for 1 second? He'd have to be a real American idiot not to click on. Surely it would have still looked like a game and he would still be in avatar form. I'm aware they tampered with his rig, so maybe that's how he wasn't in avatar form, but I still don't buy that they could make it look like real life convincingly. It's not like a dream where you fully believe you're in a real world until everyone starts staring at you. It's a very clearly a game, and you're fully aware you're in a game. I don't buy for 1 second that this plan would have worked. This one is a bit nitpicky, but Ready Player One's President Snow tries to recruit Wade into his ranks. When he's making him an offer he can't refuse, he entices him with the phrase, "You want the ship from Defender? Or the Millennium Falcon? I can make that happen for you." Now that's all well and good, except this actor is in Star Wars. So if Star Wars exists in this universe, which it clearly does, then Rogue One exists, and if Rogue One exists, then there's a bad guy in that movie who looks, sounds, and is basically the exact same character as this guy. All of the other actors in this movie seem relatively unknown, or at least look different to other characters they've played in pop culture. I'm aware it's a movie and you can't really have actors that haven't been in anything else, but I think Spielberg screwed the pooch by casting someone who is a main villain in Star Wars. Probably the biggest pop culture franchise of all time. It's like if Will Smith sat down to watch a few episodes of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and I Am Legend. The world kind of collapses in on itself due to a break in the space-time continuum.
Great Scott!
There's a big plot point where IOI savagely murders Wade's aunt and her boyfriend. Now, her boyfriend is a complete prick, so I get that Wade probably doesn't care about him. But there's barely any fallout from this event. He's kind of shocked and runs away, but then he gets chloroformed and in the next scene he's fine. We'll never really go back to this pretty serious moment for the rest of the movie. It's mentioned in passing, but there's no real scene that deals with the consequences. It's kind of reminiscent of this.
I got the results of the test back. I definitely have breast cancer.
The only section of the movie that used references well was the scene in which the characters find themselves in the hotel from The Shining. It was hilarious to see H, who had never seen The Shining, follow the little girls in the hallway before trapping himself in room 237 and trying to kiss the dead woman. The twists on certain scenes in the movie and how they were all stitched together was glorious. This scene personified the creativity I wanted to see in the rest of the movie. It didn't just blindly reference things for the shits and giggles, it used them cleverly and weaved it into the plot in a very clever way. Spielberg, I raise my glass to you for this scene. From a technical standpoint, I'd be lying if I said Ready Player One wasn't one of the most visually unique films you'll ever see.
Dear God, it's beautiful.
The mix between the Oasis and the real world was nice to see, and the transitions between the two were clear and well told. I liked the little disintegration effect on the digital characters when they logged out. The stacks were certainly a unique location that probably wouldn't look out of place in a Fallout game. The whole movie is impressive to look at, it's shot well, it looks cool, and it's definitely not like anything else you've ever seen. So overall, Ready Player One is still an entertaining 2 hours of your time, but ultimately flat. It has no depth, no great characters, and no diggity. It's rife with plot pitfalls, and I just can't find the world it's set in to be believable, even if Spielberg did an impressive job balancing the two and setting them up. In a lot of ways it reminds me of Deadpool. I can bet a lot of fans will think this movie is clever or funny because of the references it makes, even though all of it takes the least bit of effort to write. It's a movie that misses a huge opportunity to laud and oppose pop culture in a variety of ways, and instead chooses to go along a basic adventure tale while saying, and if you look out the left window you'll see the T-Rex from Jurassic Park with King Kong jumping around behind him. Apart from the Shining scene, the dated references just seem a little forced and unnecessary clog to try and make the movie hip and relevant. This could also be a problem in the book, but I've not read it so I can't say for sure. That's all from me. Remember kids, love with your heart, use your head for everything else. Vape Nish. Ready Player One gets 3 frames out of 5. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Film Rant.